Welcome to Your Inspired Journey. I'm Carla Andrews, and I have the pleasure to be here with Angela Walker. She is an author, a definitely beautiful, beautiful person that can connect with relationships as a relationship coach, and she helps women deal with situations in regards to how they can heal. Welcome, Angela. How are you?
Thank you so much. I am wonderful, and thank you so much for having me on your platform. I'm truly excited about it.
That's fantastic. I'm telling you, last time we spoke, we had a blast, and we just knew that we had to share this with many of us who are working on our relationship goals, right? And so
Yes.
it's important to know these different steps that you were sharing last time. And I wanted to definitely have you here and share a little bit about who you are and how you're connecting women back to their healing when it comes to relationships.
Thank you so much. Again, I am Angela S. Walker. I definitely want to talk about this book that I've written, How Do You Resolve in a Relationship Issue, Carla, because that book came about because years ago I had a real issue with how to resolve conflicts. I really didn't understand how to resolve conflicts. I thought, if someone offended you in that moment, that's the moment when you strike back, sort of say, that's the moment when you let your voice be heard. And I had a real issue with that because after I continued to notice that I had failed relationships, and that's whether it's intimate, business, family relationships, whatever relationship, I had to trace it back to say, why are they failing? And when I realized it was
Wow.
because how I handled situations, I had to go back and learn and identify the issues and learn how to correct those. When I learned that, Carla, I said, you know
Mm.
what? I didn't want to be selfish about it and just keep the knowledge to myself and get better. I wanted to share it. So I put it in a book. I made it 56 pages on purpose so you can get to the point. You can see yourself in the scenarios. You can see those tips and techniques I'm giving you to literally solve these problems, because in a lot of our relationships, we have the top four things that so many of our relationships lack and causes them to fail is the lack of commitment, the lack of communication, the lack of intimacy, and the lack of trust. We have those four things that are damaging so many relationships, Carla. And listen, I was married
Wow.
14, I was married 14 years. The first 10 years were wonderful. The last four was, to me, hell on earth. And we do know that we can't even
Hmm.
compare this earth to hell, but if it can come close, that life in those last 4
Wow.
years was hell on earth. And, for me as a woman to dream about marriage, most of us women, we contemplate marriage from a little girl. We have our dolls and we're playing it. And we know that, I'm the mommy, these the kids, and we plan this stuff. We don't plan it for it to fail. We don't plan for it to
Yeah.
fail. We plan for success. But you know what, Carla? Did we really plan, or did we just think it would be successful? Because when you think about
Wow.
it, we didn't really plan the success. And I help women plan the success of their relationships.
Oh, that's beautiful. So if you could mention again those four things that we need to focus on when we're building relationships.
We need to focus on commitment. We need to focus on
Mm-hmm.
communication. We need to focus on intimacy, and we need to focus on trust. And Carla, it's funny
Wow.
because people can think because you are in a relationship, we have to be committed, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. As a relationship designer and coach, I'm noticing you can be in a relationship, but it doesn't mean you're committed. It does not mean you're committed, because we all can stick together when everything is fine. But when we hit a bump in the road, and when trouble comes or things happen in that relationship that we did not expect, that doesn't quite feel good, we then
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
committed and who's not committed. So you can be in a relationship, but it doesn't mean you're committed. And when you talk about
Exactly.
communication, when we talk about communication, we're all talking. I was talking, but are you really effectively communicating? There's a joke that I often say. There's a woman told her husband, honey, every time our neighbor leaves for work, he kisses his wife goodbye and he tells her he loves her. How come you
Mm-hmm.
never tell that to me? And he said,
Wow.
no, she said, how can you never say those things? He said, how can I? I barely know the lady. So
Wow.
she was talking about herself, but he interpreted that as she talking about the neighbor. We are all talking, but we're lacking the effectiveness of our conversation, as well as the intimacy.
Mm.
We're lacking in intimacy. It doesn't mean the bedroom all the time. Intimate is that emotional spot you touch in your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we miss and skip over that emotional spot because we think their spot is our spot. So for example, you may think your husband feels good in this way when maybe you're cooking, but maybe that's not intimacy to him. Maybe intimacy means looking at a Netflix video with you. So we tend to lack in intimacy because we're trying to love the person from our perspective. And you have to love that person from their perspective. So
That's right.
it's totally, and then when we talk about, Carla, the trust, a lot of times you would not believe that we think trust could be in that certain, the breach of trust is because of the current situation. A lot of times what I'm finding, trust issues happen prior to the current situation. A lot of times we're bringing trust into this current situation. So a lot of relationships have to build that trust in order for it to be a successful relationship.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, especially with trust, going back with communication, you have to be a person who's able to listen to be able to communicate effectively. But a lot of times, by the time the person is done with the statement, you already have your answer. So you didn't even listen to what the person was saying. So you can only imagine the hiccups in that situation. And with trust, when you're mentioning about how that's important, the reliability, that's part of trust. You can't even rely on the person to carry on the communication or the conversation with you so that the marriage or the relationship stay intact.
Absolutely. You bring up the very good point. I love when someone talks about that listening part. By us conversating right now, you were able to touch on that because you were actually listening to me. And a lot of times when I'm working with my couples, I often have to teach that skill of listening because it's blocking so many relationships. No one wants to listen to the other person. We all want to talk. We all want to get our point across, but we don't want to listen. And if we just take the time to pause and listen, we can actually see and hear what's really being said. Because a lot of times we're talking, but we're not really saying what we want to say. There are words behind the words. And if you listen, you'll pay attention to that and you'll be able to discover that. Listening is a very, very important part of communicating.
That's correct. Exactly. Because listening is part of communication, right? Because if we're communicating, and if I'm talking and you're talking, then what are we doing? We're talking to walls. So it's important, and I can see how that can really impact a relationship. And without a relationship, there's no marriage. There isn't a couple. And how can you be fruitful if you're not in a space of, unions and, even in the likeness of each other? So it's important. What you're bringing forth is actually this is one of the key things in life that if you want to be successful, personal success, business success, it doesn't matter what type of success, but you need communication. You need to be able to build those relationships. And without the communication, you can't.
You cannot. One of my goals as a relationship designer and coach, Carla, is to clear out the divorce court. I want the divorce court. I want the judge to say one day, we are having a slow day.